Men objectify other men based on the size of their penis, how much sex they're having, and what they can pull because of their magnificent penis. Hi, my name is Dr. Natalie Jones. I'm a licensed therapist. I've been counseling men and women who have been victims or perpetrators of abuse for many years now. And one of the things that I wanted to come on here and talk about is how men objectify and glorify and pedestalize men because of their penis. And there's a lot of men who are sort of lumped into this category, you know, and if you've been a watcher on social media, then you'll know that there's this big thing called, you know, the gray sweatpants. And, you know, we have to see a man in his gray sweatpants to see his thinging. And, you know, while it's usually thought of like, oh, women are lusting over men and they're objectifying men because, they can see his print, or things like that in his gray sweatpants. It's men who often, salivate and objectify men because it's like, oh my gosh, do you see how big it is? I want that for myself. And it immediately becomes this object of desire for men because they immediately go to, oh my gosh, a man carries a lot of self-esteem in penis, and they sort of compare themselves to other men, and nobody really talks about that, but I'm going to talk about it. And I know I'm not a man, but I know that this is a real thing. So hopefully we can have an objective conversation about it. But there's a lot of ego that can be caught up in a man's penis, and I'll tell you the inspiration that I got for this post, and I've seen this happen a lot with other men. Just when I've worked in settings where there's a lot of men, but I got the inspiration for this post from watching The Breakfast Club, and on The Breakfast Club they were interviewing Pete Davidson, and it immediately goes to, oh, Pete Davidson has this big penis, and the men are almost like salivating over it. And, and it's like a discussion, and it's like they've reduced Pete Davidson's himself and his interview to having this conversation about his penis and all of the women that he's pulling. And this is just like locker room chatter. This is an interview that is can be an international interview. And, this is what we choose to talk to, an individual who's quite creative and quite talented, mind you, and he, not only was it interesting what they chose to sort of focus on and how they were sort of like, oh my God, it's so big. But it was also like, his reaction to how they were questioning him and sort of, once again, him sort of being put, sort of being idolized for that. It almost, from my opinion, it almost seemed like he was kind of sad about it. Like, oh, this is kind of where we're going. And I don't want to put thoughts or words in anybody's mouth, but it did seem like, he felt reduced a little bit. And there's so many things that we can talk to talented individuals about, but it's interesting that, the penis becomes like the center of the room, even when he didn't even bring it up himself, But I think that this is an example of kind of what happens. I think this is also why porn, why men can be drawn to porn, right? Oh, look at how big his penis is. Mind you, they're not even considering a lot of those guys are using those pumps or vacuums. Oh, look how long he can go, and look at his stroke game and things like that. And they sort of like, glamorize that because it almost becomes a contest, and those guys are usually wearing rings. They're, those scenes are cut. They're using enhancements and things like that to be able to do that. Porn and television is not a real representation of how sex looks like. And then, they've become obsessed with like, drilling and being a drill sergeant, if you catch my drift, as opposed to like the relational aspect and connection of people. And I just wanted to hop on here and say that men can objectify men specifically for their body parts. And I know that this happens also a lot too with gay men, and men are sought after because, they're supposed to have a prize package. And ooh, I want to see if the gossip and fodder is true. It's like, are you really packing? And, it just sort of takes away from the personality of getting to know a person. But it also, again, penis envy is so real. It's also part of what makes culture dangerous because it's like, oh, if I can have this big penis, nobody could tell me anything, right? And so you automatically know where the mind goes, like, oh, the things that I can do with a big penis, right? Like, whoa, and that imagination just sort of runs wild. The women I can pull, the nights that I can have, the men I can pull, just the things that I can have. And so it just becomes about that. And I've talked to you guys about, John Bobbitt before, the John and Lorena Bobbitt case, right? And how she got off his penis and then he got it reattached. But not only did he get it reattached, he got it enhanced. And the first thing he did when he got that enhancement, is he went out and he did porn. And so there is, I think that's an example of just how sexualized our culture can be when someone is, literally, on a show to talk about their craft or talk about them as a person, and just how like, yeah, we want to know about what's in between your legs. And it's like, wow, that's so interesting to me. And there's also like this lusting component, like I lust after that, I envy that, I covet that, I want that, and so it just becomes this thing where it's like immediate lust. And let's just say that you may have been a sexual person at one point in time, because sometimes people go through that, but what if you want to change and not make that part of your identity anymore? Unfortunately, people can get so caught up and hyper focused on that they don't make room for you to be anything else other than a sex object. So you literally have men that are looking at other men, checking them out, comparing themselves, envying you and competing with you, another man. They're in these silent competitions. Your penis may be a poster, without you even knowing it, on somebody's wall or on somebody's phone. And maybe the glory in which they're literally sort of bowing to as though it's sort of godlike, like, wow, that man's penis is like a god. It's a champion. And, I'm just sort of kowtowing and bowing to that. And I also think a lot of fights and a lot of wars are started over penis envy, but that's another conversation for another day. I hope that I didn't do too much babbling, but even if I did, like, comment, follow, and share if this has been helpful. It's been great talking to you.